It's great to speak with you today, Debbie. And today I'm looking forward to hearing your views on how supply chains and nonprofits can work together.
Hi, Justin. Yeah, thanks. Great to be with you and great to share some ideas and hopefully get some brainstorming going. And I'll do my best to squeeze it into as short a time as possible.
Great. My first question is, how does what you do in the nonprofit world relate to the supply chain industry?
Okay, it's a big question. So I'm an ordinary human being on the planet these days. I sometimes feel a bit overwhelmed, like I'm turning up to an earthquake with a dustpan and brush in trying to solve some of the problems that we have. I'm downstream of industries like pharmaceuticals, energy, agriculture, marine and shipping, energy, food, consumer packaging, and each of those industries has an impact on our oceans. And I try to look at this from a supply chain context, is that I suspect that many of your folks out there are feeling very challenged, both in sourcing and in output terms. And I can see, for example, in California, the water crisis is impacting farmers in the USA. So that's got to be a problem for your mango and pecan nut buyers in supermarkets. The BP Gulf spill has had a major impact on the local fishing economies out there. So that's still impacting stocks of shrimp and oysters in the Gulf. And the plastic packaging that every one of us uses on a daily basis is now a massive global health threat, and fish are ingesting unsustainable levels of microplastics.
What problems do you solve and who do you work with, and how do you solve these problems?
But luckily, I guess as human beings, we're hardwired to be optimistic, and the opportunities out there have never been so many. We're blessed with technology and collaboration tools today to solve issues. We've never been more connected as a people, and we've never been more able to put collective human power together for a force for good. So I think when you asked to interview me, the question I had in my mind is, does your supply chain network ever sit down and think to work with specialist NGOs in their area, and not just around the downstream challenges, but maybe getting ahead of the curve in the upstream challenges of sourcing? And that's when I thought, how many organizations regularly sit down with specialist NGOs and just have the conversation, because that's where I can see massive problems being solved in collaborative relationships, where people can just kind of have disruptive conversations, break some rules, share mutual problems, and maybe in a Chatham House forum, and just try and maybe synchronize some of the economy with the environment moving forward, and re-engineer and hack some of those siloed thinking channels. I think we're all very used to working with sustainability teams and green teams, but where do we pull research and development in on problems that are happening in the ocean relative to products that are out there today? And I think we're not all beards and sandals in the NGO and non-profit world. There are commercial opportunities out there, but as an NGO, we're kind of not mission-driven to go after those commercial opportunities. We're mission-driven to solve problems.
What challenges does an NGO see in the future of supply chains?
So on the surface, we all appear to be living in a world of plenty, but I wonder in 10 years' time if that will be the case, and I wonder how many supply chain people are actually thinking about that. I wonder how many people have had a panic this year because the supply of a particular fish stock has been closed off to them, or the fact that a rare earth metal has suddenly trebled in price because of availability, or how many people are bracing themselves for the next spike in oil price and what's that going to mean for their products in their organizations. So I think today's business has an opportunity to rethink collaborations with non-profits and NGOs who have grassroots insight on the issues at a real kind of downstream level. And I think working on shared problems and mutual concerns now means organizations get early insight into the bigger problems coming on the horizon. And the benefit for that, for organizations, means you will learn how to adapt your businesses to these future channels, and that becomes a real competitive advantage.
How can the supply chain get involved since we already have sustainability and green teams?
And this is where my challenge for the Connexus Forum really is, why don't you invite a specialist nonprofit to that table and brainstorm those challenges in the Chatham House rule environment? And you might be surprised about some of the ideas which come out and surface and the sum of your combined strengths. Well, let's give you an idea of some of the stuff that I can see. We've got, I wonder how many people have had a panic this year because the supply of a particular fish stock has been closed off to them. And I wonder how many rare earth metals have suddenly trebled in price, which means it's had a massive impact on a product out there. How many people are bracing themselves for the next oil price spike? So I'm thinking maybe if we get around the table and brainstorm some of those challenges, perhaps that's where the opportunities can really be generated. The projects can be generated to solve those problems and work together.
Also, my next question is, how does this collaboration look like?
Let me give you some examples. What if your plastic packaging technicians could have a 20% time allocation, like the Google employees, to work with an NGO partner? What products would they be inspired to create, and what packaging would they be inspired to redevelop if they could see the impact that current packaging was having on the oceans? What if you had a concern over the impact of nanoparticles that you were using in your products? And I know for a fact that these are now entering the oceans, and they're in more than 300 commercial products out there, like sunscreens, washing machines, stain-resistant clothing. Or for technology, for example, what shipping companies could engage in for measuring ocean acidification, or what technologies could be generated to carry whale warning sounds so that our whales don't get run over by big shipping lanes. And I know, for example, we've got some brilliant scientists in our network who would love to work for good rather than just for profit, and along the lines of their specialist areas that they're already in as well, in solving issues that we've flagged to them. So is there a Unilever or a Procter & Gamble out there that has the courage and the conscience to kind of engage in some of those possibly controversial projects, but actually projects that we require the answers to? Well, corporations should get more involved with non-profits and NGOs, and not just from their own perspective, but more for an impact.
And why should the supply chain get more involved with nonprofits and NGOs?
Things are changing for organizations because of how their customers are feeling. And it's important that every corporate conscience thinks and acts about how their customers are feeling now. Rachel Boxman talks about the collaborative economy, and that's a threat to every global organization out there. And I'd urge everyone to check out her TED Talk. It's not enough to make more staff and make more profit anymore. Your supply chain sourcing activities echo for a long time in your consumer's conscience. And we've all seen the results where big organizations like Tesco, for example, get it wrong and get the balance wrong. Consumers now have the opportunity to bypass big organizations, go back to being local because they're losing trust. And where you can demonstrate that your value is not just about profit, but your value is also about the way you go about your activities, you are designing more than just return for shareholders.
And how is your nonprofit collaborating?
Well, we're collaborating by connecting dots and joining networks that wouldn't ordinarily work together or even think to work together. Our dialogue has been the catalyst for projects like the ones with Parley for the Oceans and G-Star Jeans and Bionic Yarn. Unique collaboration, that one, that combines science, fashion and technology, using recycled ocean plastics to make jeans. So I'd encourage global organizations to be bolder and don't just go for that corporate agenda, low-hanging fruit. Push the boundaries, disrupt some things, have the conversation and see what ideas pop out.
And my last question is, what has influenced you to get involved with this work?
So I've been incredibly fortunate in my career. In my days as a headhunter, I spent the best part of 6 years talking to scientists and engineers, and the occasional polar explorer as well. I used to find amazing people for amazing companies, from building wind turbines to designing green rail engines to electric cars and green data centers. And that's really opened my eyes to some of the challenges that the planet's facing out there. But it's also really opening my mind to how humans can re-engineer situations to better outcomes. I think we need to apply ourselves. And we've got the wherewithal to do that, and we absolutely can do it. So I'm thinking optimistically in that way.
And thank you, Debbie, for sharing your views on this very important topic.
Thank you, Dustin. It's been a pleasure to be with you today, and I hope some of my thoughts inspire some ideas, and feel free to reach out and connect with me directly if they do.